Hey there, and welcome to the Sudo Show, brought to you by the Destination Linux Network. Today, we have a chat with DaShaun Carter, a dedicated technologist, an avid learner, and DevOps practitioner. We discuss his technology journey and the lessons he learned on today's episode of the Sudo Show. Welcome to the Sudo Show, your home for all things enterprise open source. I'm Eric, the IT guy, and joining me every single episode is my ephemeral co-host, Brandon Johnson. How you doing today, buddy?
I didn't know I was throwaway, Eric.
No, I just have you on a timer, so every 2 weeks when we record, I can just redeploy you.
Okay, I see how it is.
That would be kind of nice. Now that I think of it, if you just have a bad morning or something, you just redeploy yourself and just start your day over again.
Yeah, I'm not a Kubernetes cluster.
Well, that's kind of a bummer. But our guest today is pretty knowledgeable when it comes to Kubernetes and DevOps, so maybe we'll run this by him. But meantime, let's jump into our sponsors and get right into today's interview. Today's interview is sponsored by none other than Bitwarden. Bitwarden is the easiest and safest way for individuals, teams, and businesses to store, share, and sync sensitive data. You can go to bitwarden.com/DLN to check out their amazing service. With security breaches a regular occurrence now, experts suggest using a unique password for every account. That could easily be over 200 passwords. How do you remember all of those? That's where a password manager comes in, and the password manager trusted by the Destination Linux Network is Bitwarden. You can get started on Bitwarden for free or unlock a suite of additional tools for just $10 per year. That's right, per year. That $10 will give you all the free features, 1 gigabyte of encrypted file storage, Vault health reports, 2-factor code generation, and priority customer support. If you want to make the smart move, get a password manager and make that manager Bitwarden. Go to bitwarden.com/DLN, and thank you, Bitwarden, for sponsoring the Sudo Show and the entire Destination Linux Network.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean recently announced their new managed MongoDB service, which is a fully managed database as a service. With managed MongoDB, you can focus more on building scalable high-performance apps and less on maintaining the database. DigitalOcean built this service in partnership with MongoDB Inc., and together they have ensured that you will get access to all the latest releases of the Mongo database as they become available. As a listener of the Sudo Show podcast and a member of the DLN community, you can get started for free. Actually, better than free, because DigitalOcean is giving you a $100 credit when you go to do.co/DLN-Mongo. Need more than just a database? You can use your $100 credit to try out all the amazing services DigitalOcean has to offer. Again, go to do.co/DLN-Mongo to get started with your $100 free credit on DigitalOcean's new managed MongoDB. And thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Sudo Show and the entire Destination Linux Network.
I've told the story a few times on the show how my career really changed the day I got involved with DevOps Days Kansas City. I was just a systems administrator. I was working mid-market. But things really changed when I attended the local DevOps conference. I ended up meeting a sales guy from GitLab. He helped me get hired on, which shifted my career from a systems administrator to solutions architect, now onto a technical marketing manager. So now I'm not even a sysadmin, I'm just a marketing guy. But I started going to the meetups, and of course, before the world shut down for a year, I was starting to help plan the event. And I met some really amazing people. And one of those people is DaShaun Carter. And he's our guest on this episode. So welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me. It's long overdue. It's not overdue. It's right on time, but it's been on the books for a while, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it has. I mean, you and I were talking about what kind of content the show was missing from a DevOps perspective. And about that same time, we got a whole bunch of interview requests, and we had the SolarWinds thing. So you've been really patient, and I'm really excited to have you on the show. It's nice to get to interact with you. I realized during pre-show that you and I have not seen each other in person since DevOps Days Kansas City 2019. So I hadn't even started at Red Hat. The Sudo Show didn't exist, and my hair was a lot shorter. So, it's been a while.
It has been that we had, or the one that resonated with me. I was on this kick about home lab reference implementation, home lab reference architecture. But then it turned into reference implementation where everything was out of Git. And it's definitely ties into some of the governance automation stuff that I was kind of doing with customers, but then bringing it home and just trying to practice at a level that my customers were practicing.
I am so excited you remember that conversation because I definitely wanted to pick your brain for our audience because a lot of what you and I talked about really inspired kind of the reimagining of my own home lab. But before we get too deep into that, I want you to introduce yourself to our audience and to Brandon. You and I have known each other for a few years, but it's funny how open source and DevOps are hand in hand and one can't really exist without the other, but how not always do those two circles overlap. So why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
I totally forgot about the intro piece. My name is DaShaun Carter. I work at Redis Labs. Been here since October 19th, 2020. And I love my job. I call myself a generalist. My role is partner solution architect. Yeah, the thing that keeps me going is I like seeing light bulb moments. That is what I get excited about. I enjoy it doesn't matter how mature the solution is. If I can teach somebody that Alt-Tab trick in Mac OS where it switches between the apps, if I can teach somebody that and they see their face go, oh, that's enough. Like just that moment of light bulb, that's what keeps me going. I am still every day trying to convince myself that the sacrifices that my parents made for me, while I was growing up, were worth it. So yeah, I enjoy what I do. I don't plan to retire. I will do this until I can't.
You made a couple of statements there that really resonate. I mean, just the fact that you say, I love my job. That in and of itself is worth an interview because you knew me prior to the IT guy and you knew how burned out I was, how frustrated I was. And it was actually through that relationship and some of the contacts that I made that I came across GitLab and really changed up my career. And today I can happily sit here on this podcast and say, I love my job too. It's a lot of onboarding and transfer materials right now, a lot of meetings of, hi, my name's Eric, this is what I do. But I love what I do. I love who I work for. And if telling your story helps any one of our listeners make that kind of shift that you helped me make, I think this entire show would be worth it. Not just the episode, but the entire show. If that's honestly why we do this is
I'm nodding my head the whole time. Yes, yes, yes.
Brandon's over there just itching to jump in. I'm sorry. I'll get off my soapbox, but yeah, I mean, you know how I feel. That's why we do this show is to influence the minds of engineers and systems administrators so they don't go through a decade of a career like I did before they can say, hi, my name is Eric and I love my job. Anyway, Brandon, sorry.
So, DaShaun, that really resonated with me. I mean, I tell people this all the time. Technology isn't what I do, it's who I am, right? I cannot be me without technology. It's as simple as that. And it's something I don't think resonates with a lot of people, especially when they haven't landed in what they want to do. I mean, actually, that's a play off of one of my favorite authors. He used to say, writing is who I am, not what I do. It's the same thing.
Yep. I frame that same thing several ways. Behind me is my home lab, which right now is split as the office for my kids. My oldest two are 9 and 7. And while they're in this gap between summer school and fall semester, they are here with me during the day and they are working on technology. Those two have already built their own Raspberry Pis where they did everything from putting it together to installing the operating system to, make their background match theirs and hook up the printer, right? Who remembers all the hooking up printers? Like it's weird. We have a laser printer over there. But they are doing all those steps. And it's just me kind of sitting next to them and watching them kind of collaborate. But they've got goals. Right now they're building something and I'm calling it an internship. They've got to learn how to type. They take a typing test and they get paid for it. They're building this. It's called a room monitor. And I'm happy to talk about this real quick.
Oh yeah, go for it.
It's Raspberry Pi Zero. I work at Redis, so it's going to have Redis on it. And what they are doing initially is it's going to have a couple of sensors on it. Audio sensor, so it'll record stuff when somebody enters the room. I got 4 kids, right? They're going to deal with that. So Lainey entered into Logan's room and they're going to record it. But then they're also going to put a video camera on there. Video camera will use OpenCV and we'll see, oh, it was Lainey. Here is Lainey. I detected Lainey and do those kind of things. But then sensors like air quality, temperature, etc. And they're going to connect it. They're going to do these things, but they're going to do it. The piece that they don't know about is that I'm also going to use that OpenCV and Redis AI to determine whether or not their room is clean. And if their room is not clean, other devices will be disconnected from the Wi-Fi. So this is all a big, like, super dad, I'm way overdoing it, but it's a goal.
You're an engineer. That's what we're supposed to do.
And you talk about this is it. This is how I roll. And yeah, behind me is all sorts of sensors and adapters and Raspberry Pi pieces and hundreds of keyboards and monitors and all the things that my kids are going to play with for the next several years.
When they're done installing the monitors, they are more than welcome over here at my house to do the same, because we've got 4 kids running around, and having an argument monitor, I think, would be great. No more, well, she said, yeah, but he...
Oh, let's play the tape.
Yeah, exactly.
You go to your room, I'm going to go ahead and play the tape, and then we'll have another conversation. Let's see if your story changes. I will go watch the video.
I am convinced that parenting should come with some kind of a legal, instant replay would be great.
Yes.
But until that becomes commonplace, I definitely think that it should come with some kind of arbitration class, because I spend a lot of my downtime listening to both sides of the story and then having to make judgments, and then having my spouse go, well, that so-and-so did that earlier. Well, I wasn't aware. I wasn't in the room. I didn't. So apparently that was...
I can only make decisions based on the data I have.
Exactly.
But, having said that, maybe this will resonate with you too. A lot of the lessons that I've gained as being a parent and coaching and all those things over the years absolutely transfer to the types of conversations that I have with customers.
Saying your customers act like children?
Sometimes I'm not pointing any fingers, but sometimes the job is really just kind of listening, hearing them out. I've had somebody call it, kind of technology therapy. Like, really, like, oh, that feature's not there. And they just want to be heard that, hey, somebody's listened to them. Somebody has listened to what they want. And I get it. I've been in that seat where I just wanted somebody to listen. But yeah, these skills, I think, transfer really, really well, in both ways.
Do you think that that's the norm, though? Because a lot of what I've seen, particularly on the customer side, is someone comes in, they've got a big fancy slide deck, they have a presentation, they have a schedule, and that's what we're going to stick to. And there'll be 5 minutes at the end, maybe, for me to ask any questions or to state how I feel as a customer. What you just described is almost I hate to use a cliched term, but kind of a servant leader type position in sales. I would argue that that's not really the norm out there, though, that the customer doesn't always get heard.
So I will say that what I base my opinion on is if I put kind of these technical field solution architects, sales engineers into 3 different buckets, I'm really focusing my opinions on that most mature bucket and the things that I've seen there. I try to let the not great practices get out of cash, like get evicted, and focus on those best ones. So yeah, that servant leadership, that is definitely a highlight. And I would call that sticking to the schedule and, hey, let's go through these slide decks. I would call that an anti-pattern. I think that this role that I'm in, that I'm privy to, is changing, and it's changing quickly because it needs to. This is something that is important going forward for all of the businesses. There has to be somebody that can understand and figure out quickly how to deliver the right message. There's a time for the slide deck, right? And I opinion is that's early. Like, hey, we've done the slide deck. You understand the product, but then it's got to be more than that. It can't be the slide deck. It's got to be a specific, tailored message for that customer. Like, hey, here, why are we back? Why are we talking again? Because you learned something on that first pass, and now we want to do something specific. You've got an ask. You need help, and that's what we're here for. And it might not be something that I've already figured out for you, so I got to listen. And that's what I see from that top bucket of engineers and architects out in the field.
I think that could even be rebranded for a systems engineer or a developer. Even as technologists, we understand the magic incantations. We understand the wand waving that comes with making technology do what we want it to do. But someone who is a business analyst, someone who is, for a former systems administrator, maybe making all the cloud bits or the virtual hypervisors tie into the flux capacitor and connect to a database and engage the warp drive and recycle the stream so they don't end up crossing. We know how to do all of that. But I think that was like 6 different sci-fi references. So, I'd pat myself on the back.
Bingo.
But a developer may not understand how all that works, or a DBA, or a business analyst, or the person who has the vision for the product doesn't know, nor do they need to understand how all of those bits work. So instead of saying, well, I'm the engineer, I'm the developer, this is what I say, and so this goes, it needs that pattern needs to shift. It needs to completely be turned on its head, really, so that we as technologists are servant leaders for those that have the vision, that see what the need is in the market, that say, hey, I've got these 4 kids and we could really use this thing that would help. Now all of our kids and both the adults are all at home all the time, maybe not as much as it was a year ago, but I mean, it's definitely shifted the technology. It's definitely shifted the market, and the technology needs to follow. So as a systems administrator, as an engineer or a developer, we need to be cognizant of, we are there to serve those that have that drive, that have that itch to scratch, because by fulfilling their needs, it really fulfills a need for us, even if it's just a paycheck.
Yeah. There's a problem that I had. This is kind of looking back. It wasn't that long ago. I was an engineer and I was, I don't know, this is my code and my code's awesome. And making those decisions without really understanding the bigger picture, the systems thinking, like, oh, well, there's the things that I'm doing have an effect outside of maybe my scope, my perceived, lay of the land. And making that shift, it was a huge moment for me. That was a huge milestone in my career, is when I realized, you know what? I'm a part of this company. We're all in this together. So it's not just what my company does. It's everybody. It's you and I. It's this global community. We're all in this together. And everybody's kind of got their spot. But in this business, I'm here. I'm getting paid to do a thing, make the business money, save the business money, save the business time. And I have to understand kind of where that starts and finishes. My wife would like to say it, and understand what I get paid for, right? And do really well at the stuff that you get paid for. It's not about, oh, I got a better idea for this project that I'm working on, right? Oh, I saw this new thing. It was in Russian, but it was React, I swear, and I'm going to go ahead and implement it. That kind of approach, I've done it, right? We've all done it. But now I realize, you kind of grow up and you realize, oh, maybe that wasn't the best idea. So there's that, absolutely, that understanding where you fit in, understanding what you bring to the table for your company, and what you're getting paid to do. That's an important thing. And I don't think a lot of people really understand what they get paid to do.
Yeah, I kind of want to tie this into our main topic, which is DevOps. It links, right? When you really think about it, like, why did DevOps come about? The whole reason why DevOps came about is because developers wouldn't listen to system administrators, and system administrators thought developers were just handing over buggy code, right? So they never talked to each other. They never worked together. Developers just throw code over the fence and go, here you go, ops. Ops goes, what am I going to do with this? And then ops goes, it doesn't work. And then dev goes, it works on my computer, right? That was the whole point, was to start breaking down the walls, right? And break down and have communication channels, talk to each other, listen to the business problem, listen to the technology problem as well, right? Yeah, you have a business problem, but can the existing technology, not necessarily what you have deployed, even what you don't have, will it solve the problem, right? Yeah. And do the engineers, whether they're ops engineers or developers, do they understand how to solve it and with technology? And if they can't, communicate it.
And I have a really, really simple kind of litmus test, and it's actually, it comes out of scar tissue that I have from my career. There was a point in time where we had that throw it over the wall, that big process and sys and ops and different floors. And I don't even know who's got the bits and who does the stuff. But I was asked to, make changes. And it was actually the CEO of the company stepped into my office. He said, hey, DaShaun, I noticed on the website there's a typo. And where it's supposed to say it says t, right? That same typo. And I said, oh, no problem. Let me take care of that. Oh, here it is, just typo. Yep, boom. And in English language, and I just I don't know any of the other languages, so I did the English one, and I fixed it, and I SVN committed it, just to put some history on there. And I said, yep, I'm done. And he goes, oh, thank you, and he walks away. The next day, he comes back. He says, hey, I thought we fixed that problem yesterday. I saw you do the commit. I saw. Well, we'll say it was a Monday. And at this time, we had one of those 2-week processes where everything gets bundled up for 2 weeks, and all the base gets pushed, all the things get pushed. So I had to explain to him, we just started the cycle and this one will be included in the next cycle at the end of this 2 weeks. And then it's 2 weeks with that other team where they do their QA testing and the flipping the page, and they click this button and then click this button and they flip the page and then they click this button and they try this way and they try it that way. And then they send it to the performance team and it's 2 weeks later. So I don't know how to tell you this, CEO, but that typo might not make it to production for 3 more weeks. So for 3 more weeks, he stopped by my office. He's like, DaShaun, it's just a typo. I didn't know enough about the ways of the world, and it wasn't a mission critical, right? It's a typo, but it felt like it was mission critical because the CEO was stopping by in my office to see, like, hey, like I thought we were friends. I thought this was out, and that is the milestone. That's the event in my life that made me say, this is busted. Let me go find a better way. That was my introduction.
Better, like, understatement. Fix a typo. Let's go through 4 weeks of QA and
that's my litmus test.
and then the change window, right?
Yeah. Any customer, if there is a typo on the main page of your product, how fast can we get that fixed? That's the test.
Yeah, it should be fixed same day, right? And what I love about the goal of DevOps, and you can even pull in cloud, hybrid cloud, whatever, is that fail fast, break often, as that whole mantra. And it's okay. And it's okay to push to production, especially in the case of a typo.
Yeah. And it all kind of cross streams, right? Systems thinking, where we had these kind of massive artifacts that were being deployed. And, this whole microservices conversation was starting to come up. There's also the service bus conversation was still going on, but we'd kind of already gotten our scar too. We'd already kind of burned ourselves on that one, and that one was hot still. So we were kind of moving towards this microservices, but we didn't really know how to do it. So you kind of learn, but you being able to experiment is also a thing I think that I associated with DevOps, being able to say, hey, Brandon, I'd like to take 2 weeks and I would like to deploy this thing, JXF or whatever, just to do an experiment. Just 2 weeks is all I want to do. And this is what I expect. This is my hypothesis on this experiment. This is why I'm doing it. So this is the reason I like this is that you say, hey, here's the business objective, what I'm trying to accomplish. Here's my plan, right? That scientific method. Hey, I got a hypothesis. I'm going to test it and I'm going to validate it or invalidate it. And taking that approach. But that's a big part of, I think, what I like to do and what I like to see. And I think that also ties in with this DevOps culture, DevOps philosophy. There's no right way. Anything that was perfect 12 months ago had better not be the exact same today, right? We are constantly, and I guess that's more an agile concept, we're trying to make things better.
I argue even 24 hours.
Oh, yeah. Right.
I have clients that push code 12 times a day, if not more, right?
Oh, I was saying process. Yeah, absolutely. Like that. It should be as easy. If there was typos, it shouldn't be that we have to go through a process to do it. And that's where we get into this DevSecOps, I guess, conversation where it's more about the automation around. You don't take the people out of the process. You just make it easier. You shouldn't have to have a bunch of people involved in the process, right? So if Eric finds a typo, he can send it on its way, and there'll be some gates. Maybe depending on you can structure things different ways, right? If it's just text or a display or a font color, something like that, maybe not a big impact. But yeah, having those checks and balances in the pipeline is awesome.
Yeah, automation, you brought up automation. Automation's there to facilitate, make things easy. It's not there to replace. It's there to meaning replace jobs. It's there to make things easier. Get out of, we've said this before, get out of the toil, especially if you're an ops, right? Get out of the toil and actually instead of fixing things day to day all the time, actually developing new processes, developing better ways of doing work.
My last systems administration job was a perfect example of this. I think, DaShaun, I might have vented to you about this company. I know I did with Brandon, but it was so painful to get any change. We had an infrastructure as code platform in place, but it was used as like a fancy Kickstarter. And it's like you realize that we don't have to redeploy our cluster every single time. You realize that we can just write a YAML file and nevermore do we have to deploy Gluster because we just run this one command and it's done across the entire enterprise. And guess what? We're supporting like 12 business units. They shifted to where operations was a shared service, much like a lot of HR teams and that kind of thing have gone to today. But IT operations had made that switch. So it was prime for DevOps. It was prime for like an SRE type model. And we could, as an ops team, we could have defined one freaking YAML file that could deploy Gluster or deploy our database or deploy whatever thing we were deploying. And it would be the exact same across the entire enterprise. And you know how many hours that would have saved me in the year or so that I worked there? Dozens. And you know what I could have been doing with those dozens of hours over that year? I could have been learning. I could have been going for certifications. I could have been experimenting, because we were talking about rebuilding our entire infrastructure over the course of like a decade or something. It's like a decade. We'll have to start this process over again. How about like 2 years to get to not change our infrastructure, but to change how we think about our infrastructure, to instead of this is server and this is server A, we call him Spot. This is server B, we call him George. And oh my God, George just blew a hard drive. So now we've got to get George fixed. Instead, we don't care. Just blow it away, build a new one, deploy that application somewhere else, and order the hard drive from because it's under warranty, and you're good. And guess what? That whole process took me 2 minutes. So now this problem would have taken me 2 days. What am I going to do with all this time? And that is the biggest misconception about DevOps and operations. And I mean, DevOps has been around for 15 plus years now as a concept, quote unquote. And it's still the number one thing. Automation, infrastructure as code, all these things are not designed to lose anyone their job. Instead, it's to do quite the opposite. To go from, oh my gosh, how many trouble tickets do I have open today? Oh, 20. Cool. And then 8 hours later, well, I put a pretty big dent in this. How many tickets do I have open? 32. Oh, well, that wasn't great. And then come in the next day and do the same thing instead of, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to get to the office because we're deploying this new template and it should save us X number of hours. It'll be so cool. I played with it in my home lab. Get to the office and let's try it.
All of these practices, and this is why I talked earlier about like, I want to practice. I want to have an opinion. I want to have a well-formed opinion on why I think the way that I do. Hardware names, like I'm old enough where I named all of my stuff, right? I had names, I had stickers, they had personalities. I had a data center in my house for a while, and all the characters from Futurama were represented by some physical pizza box type server. Yeah, I've been there. And then a good friend of mine, he got out of our ecosystem and moved on. He accepted new challenges, and he was my DevOps whisperer. He's like, DaShaun, are you still SSHing into your production boxes? It's like, shame. Let me show you a new way. And I was like, what? It makes absolute sense. I would like to subscribe to your newsletter. And I had that friend that kind of like showed me, hey, these are some better ways of doing things. And because we had the shared past, right, the way that we could always contrast it against what we knew jointly, right, what we did in the past. And it was great. It was a great exercise, and it was a great kind of like hand-holding experience. This is where we get to that culture, right, of sharing what we know. I'm also old enough to know those engineers that they were excited because they were the only ones that knew how to do that thing, and that thing that was holding up the company, right? And they would hoard that information. And I can say without a doubt that people are more valuable when they share that information, share that thing that's holding the company up, and make sure that everybody on the team knows about that thing and knows how it works and how it's deployed, all those things. That's DevOps for me, that culture, that hand-holding, that it's a change, and sometimes it's uphill, right? You're fighting the current status quo, but that's where the growth happens.
So you've hinted at it a couple of times, and I'm itching to open up this box for our listeners, but you have to tell us about your home lab, because this has been a passion project of yours since you started in technology?
Yeah.
So you got to tell everybody about your home lab.
Yeah. So I have always had a home lab, and I realize that my path isn't the same, nor do I recommend it for everybody. But for me, it worked. The things that I did in my career, I was always aware that I didn't want to be pigeonholed. Doing the same thing week over week, month over month, it makes me nervous. I get bored. I'll say that. I started a company when I was in college of just hosting. It was shared servers, stuff here, stuff there, Server Beach, Rackspace, one-in-one, or there's a bunch of these things. I had stuff all over the place. And then I moved into like this whole data center that I had in my house. I was kind of like, oh, let me bring all that and I'll just buy the pizza box. I heard that Google went down this path of they just had pizza box servers and something broke, you just yank it out and move all the stuff and put another one in. I was like, oh, that's cool. I can do that. And learning along the way. But I always had this like other path outside of my day job that I was using to learn. Over half of my customers always were open source projects and they were nonprofit customers. That's where I found this low risk, high reward scenario because it didn't matter what I was doing, whether it was like a PHP forum, OS commerce to help these nonprofits. Like they didn't have anybody that knew how to turn the power off and then back on again. I was just making myself available in whichever way I could and just leaning on the open source to help these. So anyways, fast forward, I'm here, I'm doing this solution architect role and I knew how to power things up and got cool networks. So in my house today, I've got 2 networks. I've got one network, one provider coming in on one side of the house, and I got another provider coming in on the other side of the house, just in case. One is a gigabit, capacity, and the other is 50 megabit, so that if something goes, we're all here at the home. But if something fails, my little router will flip over. Right, so it's a failover situation, but it's an automated failover situation. Yeah, there's no steps that are required. I had a bunch of like rack servers, older, but still, plenty of beef. It ended up being like just shy of a terabyte of RAM and SSD all over the place and all the different kinds of RAID, but all the cool stuff because I worked for a company called VMware for a while. And, I like to play with all the things and deploy all the things that my customers were doing, right? I wanted to learn without taking time away from the customers. I would do it at home. Well, now I don't work for VMware and I don't want all of that extra power being consumed for my house. And my kids are taking to it a little bit more. So I've got Raspberry Pis. I've got over 100 Raspberry Pis deployed in my house.
Oh my gosh.
And I've got 5 Nooks, Intel Nooks, that those are used just for the Redis Enterprise, for me to deploy the software in different configurations and just test it out. But one of the tenets that I picked up, we've had this conversation, I like to redeploy things. So I try to make my home cloud, my private cloud, as close to what I would do if I were in the cloud as possible. So they don't have names. They have MAC addresses and they boot over the network, and a lot of them are power over Ethernet, and a lot of them don't have disks. They boot up and they get their stuff over the network, and that's what they do. They're just deploying little things here and there. And if I were to take one offline, I want that service or that app to run on something else. And now I'm working on this concept of, and I have it in some places, not across the board. I'm getting there. I'm just a little startup inside where I should have these things that are monitoring. So I've got these services that are exposed to the world, but there's no ports open in my house. But if those services aren't running and some Spinnaker, for example, is saying, hey, I don't see that thing deployed. Nothing's calling home. Spinnaker can stand it up in Azure or in GCP or in AWS and just make sure those services are running, right? Give it the information it needs, some YAML that says this thing is supposed to be running. It's not running in the home lab. Get it up and running somewhere in the cloud. That's it. That's the idea. So I try to treat that home lab, that hybrid cloud, if you will, multi-cloud, if you will, like I would see at an enterprise. Give it those mature features. Give it that automation. Everything is driven from a GitHub. And my GitHub repos are synced. I've got replicas, that are synced every 15 minutes across different clouds. So if GitHub falls over, I still have access to my Git repositories. And all of my systems know where the primary is, where the secondary is, where the tertiary is. So it's just those baby steps of, keeping track of data, keeping things kind of Git ops driven from Git so that I can wipe it all and deploy it again. That's a practice from engineering days. I don't know where I picked it up. Actually, I do. It was I can't remember. I had it for a second. I forgot. It was the first book that I got as an engineer. And the idea was like, hey, you write something, throw it away and just write it again. I was like, just one of the principles. You talked about, the code that I wrote yesterday, it's probably not good. You could probably use some help. I literally, looking at code that I wrote anything more than a day ago, I was like, who wrote this? Get blame. Right. Oh, that was me. That I have experienced that more times than I care to share. So I try not to judge anytime I get into code because, you never know what was going on.
Yeah, I've done that a few times. Who wrote that? oh no,
Yeah.
that was me.
So much to the point where I was like, upset. I was convinced that it was that person over there. I was convinced, oh, I would never do that. They should have done this. And then it was me. Yeah.
Get blame. Oh no.
Let me check the git commit ID.
Yep.
Wait a minute.
So
Oh no, I got to change my password because somebody's in there mucking with my account.
Yeah, you brought up hybrid cloud. I mean, this is a topic I'm very, very passionate about. I mean, you're going to say, Brandon, of course you like hybrid cloud. You work for Red Hat. That's all they talk about is hybrid cloud. But, I actually think it's important. Explain why, and I'll ask my question. The reason why I think it's important is I work with Fortune 50 customers. There's a lot of legacy. There's a lot of different departments taking out the corporate credit card, going to Azure, going to AWS, going or IBM Cloud, go wherever. They're going to whoever they can and going and deploying workloads, either because they haven't adopted DevOps practices, so IT is slow. Or at least that's the excuse. And so there's a lot of legacy. There's a lot of multiple clouds being adopted.
Or you might get a kick out of this. I heard somebody in the community the other day was telling me about how they talked to a company who is multi-cloud, not by choice, not because of any technological reason, but get this, because it keeps the expenses on their expense reports below a certain threshold so it doesn't get flagged. So they're multi-cloud just so they can deploy different services on different clouds and keep it under the radar. Sorry, I thought I'd slip that in because it happens. It's unbelievable, but it's out there.
And not just from a cost perspective, like each public cloud has their own advantages, right? Like Google, at least when Google first started in the public cloud space, that was where you really wanted to do data analytics, right? Google was really good at that. Amazon, general compute. Microsoft really is more so if you were a Microsoft shop more than anything. But Azure runs some of the more Linux than I ever thought they ever would. My point is like, it's important. Going to the question, like, do you see that being a standard model? Because like on-premise isn't going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere. So here's my, again, observations. What I think is happening. What I think is happening is companies realize they need to move faster. So they see there's less friction a lot of times in the cloud. And that's what I think the value of the clouds provide is that agility. So that's a broad kind of opinion on why teams and workloads are moving to the cloud is because they need to get to their customers faster, right? We have to deliver this thing to our customers quickly, and we can't wait for the mainframe update that doesn't happen for 6 more weeks. But mainframes are there for a reason. Mainframes have this efficiency built into them. It's not about releasing code, and it's fragile in a lot of cases, but there's this efficiency, and these companies are built on them. So I see the value there too. And I think that once you've kind of outgrown that need to be agile, that need to move fast, I think that there's a maturity model where those workloads that needed to go to the cloud in order to get mature and become a real product, get past that MVP and get out to legacy, where they're making money and they're on cruise control. That's when those workloads need to come back because they're cheaper to run in your data center on-prem.
Yeah, it's true.
And I don't think there's a lot of companies, I know that they're out there, right? I have seen that where they are bringing those workloads out of the cloud and back on-prem. But there's so many companies that haven't even gone to the cloud yet, right? They're still trying to get to the cloud. They're still trying to get to those agile processes because they've got the culture and the debt and all the things. So there's this, it's circular. And there's places where things are needed and it's a decision that needs to be made. There's not a one size fits all.
Circling back to the home lab, doing it hybrid, I got to ask, what are you running?
Hello world, right? Production quality hello world. So all I need is a website or a video or something. And the idea is that I just want things running. So any of little behind the scenes, like any of the demos that I do that I'll deliver to a customer, they're running right now. I learned along the way that, well, what I thought my perception was, I had gotten introduced to these brilliant engineers, these brilliant solution architects while I was at Pivotal. in that first conference where we're hanging out. Everybody's got their backpacks and their laptops. As soon as we get on a topic about CI/CD, concourse, boom, they all open up their laptops and they're talking, oh, here's my pipeline. And everything was running and they had their deck that said, this is why our pipelines look like this. And they were ready to tell the story. 5 minutes later, we're talking about something else. And here's my metrics. Yep. Here's how I do monitoring. And here's all the things. And here's all the tracing and analytics. And it felt like they had all of these demos running on their laptops, just waiting to demo to me. That's what it felt like. But I now realize it was just, I was trying to get to this bar that didn't exist, but I was surrounded by these people that were in that top bucket. My manager, my leadership put me in the presence of the best. And I'm super thankful for that. And that was just the vision that I had. I was like, oh, you have to be at this level. You got to get these demos to where you know how to do them all the time. They're always running somewhere so that if my laptop messes up or my something's wrong, I can deliver it from my phone. Now, this delivering from my phone is something that I picked up while I was running my own company. I started that company when I was in college. When I got into the enterprise, I had this 47-mile commute back and forth that I did with carpool. And it was nice to be able to, let's leave 15 minutes early. I'll do the rest from my phone, right? While we're driving, an hour and a half to where we lived. So that concept of being able to do things from my phone was a huge part. And that is actually a part of this DevOps story for me. After kind of Kubernetes came onto the scene, customers were asking for stuff and partners and OSS projects were being delivered with these Helm charts. It was nice to be able to, go have lunch. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and deploy that Helm chart while we're sitting here having lunch. Oh, let's make it this size and doing these configuration options so that when we got back up to where we were collaborating, it was there. Things were just running.
You're doing a lot of things that I did as an SA.
Yeah.
Like one of the things that I would do, especially like during the last year, like I'd start off the presentation going, all right, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to demo OpenShift. And I'd say, I'm going to hit start right now. It's going to deploy it and then we're going to come back to this. And I go, all right, this is what I'm going to show you guys. And then I go and show it like just 5 minutes later. And like, that's the kind of thing that gives you that wow factor, right? That's kind of like in the career part of our conversation. If we want to jump over to that, taking that type of role to the next level by doing those little cool wow factors. Just like it's always those little things that go, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. But that's what we want to give to our customers, right? All of those cool tricks and things that I've learned along the way, all the conversations that we've had, that's what I want to bring to my customers. That's what I want to bring to not just my customers, to everybody, right? It's not just like what's in my bag. It's like what's best? Like what can we do together to move forward? And sharing those kind of experiences, right? Sharing those like, yeah, I mean, if it takes you 2 weeks to stand up your cluster for whatever, I get it. But I know, and I can speak to others from the community that have done this and they could probably do it, in the cloud in a day, and that's with all the approvals and with all the stakeholders involved and signed, sealed. Yep. Here's your subscription and your PO. Go do the things. To be in a place like that. And I remember too, being an engineer and, hearing the stories about all of the other companies and all the cool things that they were doing. I realized that there are some really amazing stories from all these companies that we work with that we hear about. It's a team, and it's that team that's in that top bucket. It's that team, that one team that's on stage telling their story, and this is how we do it, right? And they are so proud, but there are 2 more buckets of, one of them is like, we do some of those things. And then there's another bucket it's the Wild West. Like, I don't process. What are you talking about? I'm pushing to prod. Yeah, I'm living on prod. Here's my terminal open on prod. There are 3 maturity buckets at all of those companies. Any company that you pick, then you've got that shining example of what could be. There is somebody else in that exact same company you do not want touching your production. Right. So yeah, it's all about the filters. It's all about how we kind of look at things.
So I wanted to pick your brain on something because you and I are very similar, and Brenda too, even. The 3 of us should probably start a support group because I liked something you said. It was basically that you are, I want to butcher this, but basically you're a technologist first and you just happen to get paid for being in technology. And I think Brandon and myself would echo that as well. What we do during our day job, we take home. I may be talking to a bank during the day about their Red Hat Enterprise Linux container journey. And then at night, I'm setting up a Minecraft server for the family, but it's running on RHEL and it's using Podman as a container platform. It's always and like Brandon said, he's nothing without he's not Brandon without his technology. And I think the three of us kind of agree on that. So here's something that I've struggled to answer for myself in a succinct way, something that's measurable. How, when that is your existence, when you live and breathe technology and sell, maybe not selling, but just kind of sharing with others your technology journey, how do you stay motivated? Because you, my friend, are one of the most positive people I know, and I've not seen you struggle with this. So how do you deal with the burnout? What do you do to get away from all this? I'm getting better about this, and Brandon actually keeps me accountable sometimes, where it's just like, you know what, I'm fed up, I've had enough. You're not going to see me on chat all weekend. I'm not going to power up my server, not going to power up my desktop. I'm done. I don't want to see another terminal for the next 3 days. How do you have a system? Do you have measurements that you follow that says, we're kind of in the yellow here. We don't want to get to red because that's burnout and that's not good. So we need to do these things to kind of get us back into the green, get us back into that mode where we're really thriving and excited.
Yep. And we touched on it. It took my wife. I will first admit that I have been burned out, not as bad as others, but I'll admit I've overdone it. And I will admit that I've even gone through depression, where it's like, oh, this is hard. Like, am I doing the right thing? Maybe I just need to let my wife go and have a career and I'll stay home. Like, I've been there. And there's some point along the way where she just said, what do you get paid to do? Just worry about that. It's like, okay, that made sense. And that's kind of like, get me out of the funk, and I get it. There's another piece where I had to make a change. It's easy to get overwhelmed by all of the things that we have to learn. And especially in this kind of solution architect role, but I think it just as an engineer, especially these enterprise companies where, that team over there, that team that's up on stage, that shining example of what we do here at big company, right? And there's somebody else who's like, what? I can't even think about that. I can't even fathom what that's like. And I'm in the same company. I'm just on a different floor. Like, I can't even fathom what that looks like because my experience is completely different. Right? There's so much to learn. They're so far away from having the experience where that actually matters and is valuable. And there's a point where I had to stop looking at things as hey, you've taught me something, or there's something that I don't know that I need to know for my job. And it used to be that I was like, oh boy, I've got to go and learn this, and I've got to learn it by Friday, and I'm going to have to demo it on Monday. Like, I am overwhelmed because there's something here that I don't need. And they just said some 3-letter acronyms that I've never even heard of. I have so much to learn. And taking that from being like a panicky, frustrated feeling to flipping it and saying, oh boy, I've got some more stuff to learn.
Spin up the server. I'm ready to go.
But realizing, again, when I came into this role, switching kind of to the vendor side of the equation, when I came into the role, I had no idea what I was getting into. My first interaction with my peers, they were amazing. They were brilliant. I was like, I was never going to compete with these guys. Like, there's no way that I'm going to be at that level. But I had somebody kind of point me in the right direction, made me feel supported, and kind of showed me, hey, well, why don't you try this? Yeah, and slowly, instead of that panic around, hey, this is what I'm having to do, it was, hey, this is what I get to do. And I was looking at my career and what I was doing as purely personal growth, 100% personal growth. I'd kind of adopted this mindset with like my health and just trying to be better than yesterday. Learn a little bit every day, right? From that's just like a kids, and I tell my kids like, hey, just keep on learning. We talked about the typing and the home lab and do the things. Keep on learning. Just be better than you were yesterday because that can't go away. So kind of combining those two things to then making it deliberate, like taking and blocking off time. I'm going to practice my demos. I'm going to walk through. Not all of them. I'm going to practice one. I want to make sure I still have them. So I got a list of demos. I got a list of things that I'm ready to demo anytime that are just up and running. But they get practice. And I'm, it might be the exact same way I said it last week. It might not. Maybe I've learned some things since last week, but I'm always updating, always iterating on that's my product, is those demos, those talk tracks. And that's what I do. That's this. So it's deliberate practice and all the things that I try to do. It's understanding that I am blessed. I'm lucky to be in this role that I'm in. So I need to be thankful for that. Former leadership kind of said it was like the lottery of life. Like I know that there's tons of people that have worked way harder than I have, and they deserve this job way more than I do. So I'm thankful. So what I'm trying to do is share that back. Like, let me share you the cheat codes that got me here. I don't want you to have to bang your head on all the scar tissue and all the things that I made a mistake on. Let me share that to hopefully kind of like pay back karma, all the lucky and the help and the leadership and the guidance that I had. I want to be able to make myself available and share that back out. And that's kind of the core of the juice is the phrase, join us in creating excitement. I love what I do. I started off by saying that. And if I can get somebody else excited, that light bulb feeling, that personal growth is something that I think it's overlooked. There's a lot of colleagues, friends, associates where they're looking to make a change. And a lot of times they always start, well, I got to make this. Whoa, why are you bringing that into the conversation, right? That's not that shouldn't be the start. What do you want to feel, right? We're people first, right? What do you want to be doing? Like, it feels so weird every time I ask the question, what do you want to be doing in 5 years? It's like, am I interviewing for a job in 1995? Like, what is this? What are you even doing? But I asked that question for a reason. Do you like what you do? Like, if your day that you had today, could you do that same day over and over again for 60 days in a row? Today, just think about just today. I know that I could. I know that the conversation that I have with my manager today was awesome. We went all around mind map and all the things. I know that the conversation I had right after that with one of my peers was awesome. Like, and I can say that about yesterday. The stuff that I do day to day, and there's tough days, but I'm framing in a way like I am growing in this role, and that's exciting. So these other talk tracks, whether you're an engineer or you're an architect in the field or whatever, there's cheat codes, and not everybody shares it. But getting back to DevOps, I think that's part of it, is sharing that experience, changing the culture, right? Now I'll talk about some things that I don't like to talk about, but all of the gatekeeping in tech, and not just like product delivery tech, but also like infosec tech, like the all of the gatekeeping that exists. It's frustrating and it needs to go away, right? I even hesitate to say gatekeeping in my CI/CD pipelines because it feels like, oh wait, I don't like that. Like, let's see what we can do. Yeah. So I'm at a point where I think that I can maybe affect some better outcomes for not just the people that I work with, but for others, through channels like this, just by having a different perspective, and knowing that we are a community. Like this conversation, again, my mind is going all over the place, but just trying to get a little better every day and trying to improve my understanding so that I can share it with others. That's what it boils down to. I'm old. I'm getting old. And I'm at this point in my life where I try to boil things down into these, just like, no, it's just this is the phrase and this is what it means, right? The African proverb is you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together. Like building these pithy one-liners, as Andrew Clay Schaefer would say. It's like building that library of these are the things, these are opinions that I have, and this is truth. And they're always fuzzy, vague, but they work. They work for me. They work. It's this kind of shared context. It works for my kids. But then it's things that I can just lean on, that I can just say. And that's where I'm at.
That's awesome. We often measure the success of one of these interviews by how closely we stuck to the outline. And I am thrilled to say that this has been an amazing conversation. I think we went off the rails about 2 minutes in. So I'm really glad that you joined us and shared some of your thoughts. And I know based on the number of hours you and I have spent either online or at meetups or conferences talking, that we could cover a range of 1,000 different topics, and it would all be encouraging and it'd all be helpful. But if you wanted to say one thing, if you wanted to give our listeners just one thing to work on in the near term, in the next 2 weeks, in the next month, that would radically change the way they look at their job, the way they look at where they are in life. If there's just one thing, and it may be cheesy, but we embrace DevOps. So you pick one thing, you fix it, you move on to the next thing, you fix that, and you look back 6 months later and go, oh, wow, I'm definitely not there. So I may not be there yet, but I'm definitely not there. So that's good. What would that iterative thing be that you'd share?
Yep. And this, I think it covers a broad range of topics. It's got a big scope. Keeping track of the little wins. That's it. I'll just keeping track of the little wins. And the framing that I'll put around it is at the end of the year, When you're doing your review, your boss, and this is scar tissue, your boss says, "Hey, what did you do this year?" And being an engineer for 15 years, I lied to myself. I thought that my manager, that my leadership, my peers, they all looked at every commit that I did, and they saw the documentation that I was providing, and they saw my Git commit messages, and they knew that I was delivering high quality code, whatever that means. But I was convinced that for 15 years that's what was happening, that my managers knew exactly what my code looked like. And I was frustrated. I thought that I wasn't, getting the opportunities that I wasn't getting because they didn't think that my stuff was good enough. So I dug in more, and I'm gonna do even better. And this next thing is gonna be even better. But what I wasn't doing was keeping track of the little wins. So somebody, kind of framed it this way: keep track of everything. Keep a log. Hey, this week I did this. Keep track of every little success and failure that you have along the way. So when your boss asks, "Hey, what did you do this year?" "Oh, where would you like me to start? Would you like the 20-minute version or the 2-hour version?" Because I've got it all right here. And that's for your career. That could also be for your product, your team, right? That path to production, automation. Like, what are the little bits? What are the decision trees, right? That decision history is something, it's a practice. I don't know where it fits exactly, but I know that it's valuable. Being able to come into a new team, into a new OSS project, a new vendor project, and see a decision tree. Why is this an option? Why is this a command line option and not this? Why are these decisions being made? It wasn't like that a year ago. What happened? And being able to come in and get leveled up and be level set, ready to move forward because you have that information. And again, whether that's for your career, right? Having those notebooks, that's a lesson. I don't really do the notebooks anymore, but I am keeping track of these are the things that I did. Yeah, I don't write those anymore. I'm using Trello more and more.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm keeping track of every little thing along the way. Good, bad, it's searchable. I'm using labels so that I can say, "Oh, yep, this is this type of thing," or maybe there's 5 labels on it because it, cross paths. But yeah, keeping that information out, putting it out there so that when it comes time to, "Hey, how many times did you do this thing?" "Well, let me go look." I have all of the information. Every context switch that I do during the day, kind of keeping track. So I don't have to keep my hours or anything, but it's nice to know what was I spending time on? How much time was I spending on things? Yeah. Education-wise, personal education-wise, or public-facing or customer-facing, whatever it is, knowing like, hey, where are those buckets? And if I want to make a change, it's good to have that data to base your decision off of in order to make that change. Like, hey, I would like to do more, whatever it is. Here's what I was doing. I make this decision at some point to change, and here's what I'm going to do based on the data that I have. However you want to frame that. That's my key, is like taking notes, capture those wins.
Yeah, we have release reviews, we have outage debriefs, we have annual reviews, we have KPIs and all these other acronyms that we track at work. But I came to the conclusion probably a year ago, maybe 2, that I didn't really have anything like that for myself. It's just none of the kids are bleeding. Everyone's dressed and clean, and I went to work and I got a paycheck, and I guess that's success. And oddly enough, this manifested itself in kind of an interesting place. And I've started implementing that myself. My entire life, I have been an avid reader. I love books. It can be fiction, can be nonfiction. I don't care what it is. I love to read. My iKnow app on my iPad, my RSS reader, I actually have a paid subscription for an RSS reader because I love digesting content and reading, whether it's blogs or tutorials or books or productivity tips and tricks. I love to digest material. And where that kind of manifested itself was getting into a routine of reading articles, putting it into my backlog, reading it when I've got 15 minutes, read 2 or 3 articles. But as an exercise, I actually went through and started compiling a list of books that I wanted to read. And now that book list sits in my Todoist, which you use Trello. I love Todoist. I know that's a big shock to Brandon and everybody listening, and it dawned on me that just from going through the just lists that I'd written down on scratch paper or put into a note on my phone, when I compiled all that down, I had a list of over 60 books that I wanted to read. It's like, oh my gosh, I claim to be an avid reader, and yet I have all these books on my backlog. And how much have I actually progressed in that over the past year or so? Well, the answer was 1 or 2 books, maybe. So when I realized that, I actually kind of dipped into my DevOps bag of tricks, and it's like, okay, how many books do I think I can read in a month? let's not try and set a year goal. How many can I read in a month? Well, it depends. So I actually have all of those books in my backlog. And then the book I'm currently reading, or books as it usually happens, I'm usually reading something for fun and something for either parenting or work or something. So I usually have two. I actually have an audiobook. So I have three in progress right now about various topics. And every chapter, when I start the book, I create a subtask for every chapter. And I go through, and every time I start a new book, I schedule a chapter every workday. Weekends are too unpredictable, but on work days, I read a chapter a day during lunch. And
he did air quotes for the audience. Lunch
Yeah.
was in air quotes because who really has lunchtime, right?
I don't ever take a lunch break. It's whenever I realize, oh, I have another call in 10 minutes. I should probably eat something. But usually kind of in that break between all the morning meeting rush and the afternoon focus time, I usually break and I'll read a chapter. And to date, I mean, we're about 7.5 months into the year, and I've probably read close to 10 or 12 books. And granted, my list hasn't shrunk all that much because, you read 2 or 3 books, mark them off your list, and then somebody hands you a list of like, well, you'd love these 4 books. Like, well, great, thanks. But I'm making progress. I feel like I can put in my elevator to pitch to people of, yeah, I'm an avid reader. I love to read. I wish I could love paper books, but my interest varies far too much. So I live on my Kindle, but I love to read. And it's funny how what you were describing kind of mirrored that as well, of I enjoy reading again, and I'm actually reading instead of saying, yeah, it'd be nice someday. And there have been times where it's like, okay, you know what? I've got kids are asleep, wife's watching her show. I'm going to play a video game, or I'm going to watch a TV show that I've watched 100 times. No, actually, you know what? I'm just going to crawl into bed and read for a couple of hours. And that has been such a change in how I feel about my personal health, that I get to do something I love, and I'm measuring it.
The measuring piece, I think, is important. Just like I said, measure the things. You said KPIs. In my weeks, I like to take a week. I like weekly sprints. But even with my life, I like to plan a week at a time. But anything beyond that is like, who's got time for that, right? But just like understanding these are the things that I want to get accomplished. So start the week. Like these are some things I'd like to do, whether it's read 5 chapters, but then adjusting it over time. Our good friend Aaron, he started doing the studying 20 minutes a day. Right. And he was doing every single day. And I was like, that is awesome. Right. But whether it's studying or learning or reading or fitness, getting those reps in, right, it's important. But just like having a plan, being able to check things off, whatever the mean time to dopamine is something that we haven't talked about, right? Like it's good to get those dopamine hits when you accomplish something so that you can go into the next one. So you don't want to have it, someday I'll get to it. Like that doesn't help you get things off the backlog. Right? You have to make them attainable and repeatable, and hopefully there's some personal growth, and you'll get that dopamine hit, and you'll do the next one. You want to get better, so that's the idea.
So as we're kind of coming to a close, there was something you did want to mention, and that would be our sponsors, Bitwarden.
Yeah, we've talked about this kind of home lab reference architecture. Secrets are important. If anybody's ever handed you a secret, you say no, you just bat it down. I'll tell that story later. But it's the idea of I want to have my secrets taken care of. I listened to one of your early shows, and you introduced me to Bitwarden. It wasn't on my radar. I was using another service, and I was like, some of these things make sense, but why am I not using Bitwarden? And I went, I took it for a spin. But now all of my home lab, all of my automation in my house, I have implementations of Bitwarden. As part of my during when I'm doing live streaming on Twitch, in order to keep my secrets secret, my automation is calling out to Bitwarden's API to pull in the secrets for my automation. So yeah, I have completely switched all of my secrets information over to Bitwarden, and it's because of this show.
I know we've got a few listeners over at Bitwarden, so I'm sure they'll love to hear about that. In fact, we're talking about doing an interview with Bitwarden, so I might reach out to you and get some kind of content from you to share with our listeners, because secrets management is a huge issue right now, as we all know, and just trying to keep track of all of those secrets, and then to be able to use it in a meaningful way other than just copying and pasting out of your vault. It's really cool what you could do with an Ansible playbook and a call to Bitwarden, and how secure you can make that.
Yeah, the best place for your secrets is on GitHub, guys. Come on. Right there in your code.
If it's encrypted.
Yeah. base 64 encrypted, right?
Plain text. Come on, guys. What's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can happen if it's in plain text on GitHub?
So, DaShaun, I think I've got a co-host spot opening up here because I might have to fire the other guy.
No way. No way. I'm a fan.
Well, I am really, really glad that you joined us. This was an awesome conversation, and much as I promised Brandon, we were all over the place. So I'm glad that you joined us, and it was a great conversation. It was great to get caught up with you and to swap stories again. And so here soon, in-person events will start to take place again, and we'll get to hang out. But in the meantime, is there anywhere you'd like to send folks?
Maybe this twitch.tv/JavaGrunt. Every once in a while, I like to just hop on and live code. And I'd like to invite you guys. There are several topics that I'd still like to discuss whenever we get the chance. We can have a virtual coffee or whatever. There are several topics that we've kind of touched on today that I would like to dig deeper into for sure in the near future, not 6 months out.
So I'm so glad you said that because, shameless plug, we have a Sudo hangout once a month at different times where Brandon and I usually jump on a Zoom call or something, and we've got a growing community of folks that jump on. There's no scripts. There's no ad reads. There's no. I don't have to do voiceovers during the intro, but it's a great time once a month to just virtually get in touch with different technologists and you and all of our audience and anybody that hears this is more than welcome to attend.
Wonderful.
So we didn't pay DaShaun to say that, but I'm so glad you did because it allowed me to plug Hangouts, which we have coming up here in just a couple of weeks. But we'll have to join you and we'll have to have you back on the show again.
I'm looking forward to it.
Sorry, I cut Brandon off again. I've been doing that all recording.
It's okay. You're fine. It's okay. I was going to say that Sudo Hangouts is on July 29th. Eric posted incorrectly on Twitter, so it is on July 29th.
I'm putting it on my calendar.
I'll send you the details. Thank you so much for joining us today. As always, your feedback is welcome. Head on over to sudo.show/discuss. If you'd like more of Brandon and I, you can find it over on sudo.show or on social media at Sudo Show Podcast. You can catch more awesome content over at our network partners, destinationlinux.network. Brandon, is there anywhere else you'd like to send folks?
You can follow me on Twitter at dbrandonjohnson or my website at open-tech.net.
And you can follow me at ITGuyEric or on itguyeric.com. Remember, the Sudo Show is your place for all things enterprise open source. Until next time.